Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Loudguns, and today we're going to take a look at what more economic and industrially focused players can do to insulate themselves from the unwanted attention of pirates. So a couple of weeks ago, myself and my organisation, we attracted the attention of Mongrel Squad. You might well have seen some of their videos. They do some really interesting stuff in the field of piracy. And we just wanted to dive into sort of maybe the lessons that we'd learned from our encounter. So one of the things I love the most about the persistent universe idea in Star Citizen is that it's truly a test bed. So not just a test bed for us as alpha testers to make sure that Star Citizen becomes a better game, but also a test bed for organizational tactics, sort of basically theory crafting, but in a real living environment. So, full disclosure, I've gone with the title of The Siege of Arkel 1 because I think it sounds cool. But you could easily argue that it's a bit flattering, and you could have called it The Massacre of Arkel 1, because certainly in the early stages of what became quite a large, long spanning fight, we got our backsides handed to us. However, I'm really proud of all of my orgmates in Frontier Consolidated. Everybody dug deep, stayed calm, and had a really good time. And also, sort of thanks to the Mongrel Squad guys, there were a lot of GGs all round at the end of the fight as people potted off to bed, as it did go on for a good 2 hours on a school night. So not surprising there. So just a bit of a warning in advance, some of the footage from the fight that I captured is a bit scrappy. We obviously didn't know it was going to happen, so I only hit record after the first 15 minutes when we would try to fight back, and I was trying my best to do a bit of fighting myself while also capturing some video. So I hope it sort of gives a sense of what sort of being in a bigger scale fight might be like, but it's not going to be sort of Morphologus's 4K ultra beautiful cinematics. So just before we get into it, a couple of housekeeping bits. This to me is really why it pays to be part of an organization in Star Citizen. It's an MMO that we're hoping that CIG build. So that really means that there's going to be some experiences which you're not going to get if you play solo. And I would highly encourage all of you to find your community. And if you want to come and join us, then there's a link to our Discord in the video description down below. But also, you might want to be on the other side of the fence as the pirates taking the goods off the miners and the industrialists. So check out guys like Mongrel Squad and check out other organizations on Spectrum. Just I would say just find your crowd. But if you want to experience some stuff like this, then it really helps to get involved with other people. Also, if you're just watching these videos because you're trying to see what Star Citizen's all about, and hopefully I'm going to show a different side of it today, then consider using my referral code, which I'll just flash up on the screen just now. That'll just get you a bit of extra starting cash, and it helps me out too. So without further ado, let's crack on to the tips and the footage. So just by way of a bit of background, we'd been doing a mining operation out in the Aran Halo with a number of moles and scouts, and Mongrel Squad set up a very good trap for us on the way back to the refinery. So they had the Mantis waiting and a bunch of Avenger Warlocks. So when our mole went back through to drop off the first load, we got caught in a quantum field dampener and then EMP'd. So and they demanded their ransom off us. So just one thing I want to get out there straight away. There's a lot of chat in the Star Citizen community, and the words pirate and griefer often get conflated. So I don't want that to happen here. What happened here was piracy, pure and simple. So pirates to me have to have a economic motive behind their actions. That's what separates a pirate from a griefer. Griefers just want to blow up your ship to harvest your salty tears in global chat. But pirates, they want to profit from their actions. So we were offered a chance to negotiate I believe the term which came back from one of my guys was that we don't negotiate with terrorists, and that was where the discussion ended. And then we got out our combat ships and we got into a really good fight. But that's probably where I'd start, like with my first tip, and that is to consider negotiation as an option if you come up against real pirates. So just bear in mind that you have, let's say, mined materials or cargo if you're doing a trade run, that is worth a certain amount of money to you. Paying a ransom, it might not feel good. You might not want to do it, but sometimes it's going to be the rational thing to do, to avoid sort of losses to still come out of the session ahead, to protect the value of the cargo that you might have invested in. And this is how things work in the real world. So we have real world modern day piracy. And just to draw on one real world example, back in 2008, there was the case of the Sirius Star, which was a Saudi oil tanker hijacked by Somalian pirates. And eventually, sort of through negotiation, that oil tanker and its cargo were released to the owners after they paid a ransom to the pirates. So I think sort of a key thing for you here is always know the value of your cargo. So I would suggest having some form of calculator. Myself and some of the guys in our org might just pop something together quickly in Excel, because you need to know the value of what you're transporting, because otherwise how are you going to know whether or not you're paying a fair ransom? Now, keeping it realistic, so once you know the value of that cargo, come up with a percentage that you're willing to pay. In an ideal world, it should be enough to keep the pirates happy that they've got a decent return from a day's work. But also bear in mind that, just because you've paid the ransom doesn't mean the risk to your cargo is over. And you might have invested quite a lot of money into getting that cargo. So factor that in. Sort of looking back at the Sirius Star, it was released for a ransom of $3 million. When it had 2 million barrels of oil on board. So just at today's prices, or Brent crude's $77 a barrel. So that was $154 million worth of cargo. And the ransom was therefore about 2%. I'm not saying in Star Citizen terms that you should say at 2%. I think the pirates might laugh and blow you up. But just bear in mind, the pirates might not have a way to sell your cargo easily, or they might not get as good a price as you might get. So I wouldn't go giving over too much to pirates. It's still going to be a good day's work for them if they get a sensible percentage cut of your total value. So I would recommend for orgs in particular, though, having this sort of crisis plan in place before the crisis happens. So when you're under attack by pirates and EMPs are being fired and your quantum drive is disabled, particularly in a group, there can be quite a lot of chatter on comms, a lot of conflicting opinions. So if you've already got a firm plan of what you will do in the event of a pirate attack, how much you will pay, then you can just operate to your plan, and that increases your chances of it going well. Also for orgs, particularly looking forward in the game when we have maybe massive cargo haulers like hulls D and E, make sure the right person has got the money to pay the ransom if you need to pay one. You might set your ransom that you'll pay on your cargo at 10%, but does the person who is there piloting or captaining your big cargo ship, do they actually have the funds available to pay that if it was to be necessitated? And finally, on the negotiation side, I'd probably suggest that you come to an arrangement that is, we'll pay half of the ransom now, and we'll pay half of the ransom when we're safe. I like to think that most people who are really serious about piracy as a career choice will probably appreciate operating to some form of criminal code. And if you pay, they'll let you go. But I wouldn't be too naive. So some people would probably quite happily take half the payment up front and then rob you anyway. They've got you at their mercy, so leave yourself a ticket out of there. Um, that being said, reputation is not only a Mobiglass app, so make sure if you do get safe that you resist that temptation to keep the other half of your money, because I'm pretty sure you'll find yourself pretty quickly on a list of people who don't pay, and that's really going to hurt you in the long term, I think. Of course, exactly the same goes for the pirates who take half your money and then rob you anyway, because that word will get around the traders and the miners, and then we'll know that you're not a pirate to pay a ransom to. So my second tip though is to be more unpredictable. So we fell into a trap of complacency. I now realise, definitely my mistake. But you don't have to just go by the most direct QT jump route. Sort of when you're coming back with a full load of Quantanium, you don't need to set your destination as Arc L1 or Crew L1 and hit go. And maybe you could jump a couple of million kilometers to Crusader first, then cut your jump by holding down B or switching off your ship with U and turning it back on, and then redirect your jump back to the refinery. If you're hauling some very valuable cargo, maybe consider factoring a few of those jumps in. Maybe jump away from, if you're leaving Port Olisarce, maybe jump towards Hurston before you cut your jump midway and then you turn around to go back towards ArcCorp. If you've got the time to make these routes more complex, then that will throw people off because they will have seen you leaving a certain way. The quantum snares are quite a low range, so the Mantis, I believe, is about 20 kilometers. So if we'd even done some fairly minor adjustments to our routes back, we could have popped out on the other side of the refinery and stood a chance of just sneaking back in or beating the pirates back to the landing pads and getting our ships away without any of this happening. And similarly, if you've got scout vehicles and escort vehicles with your operation, consider sending them on ahead of you. They can head through, and at least they can let you know, oh, there's a pretty big pirate crew waiting for you guys at Arc L1. And my third tip is to be ready to fight. Do what you can to improve your chances of fighting back. If nothing else, that will give you a stronger position in negotiating. So just make sure that whatever you have to fight with is locked and loaded. We brought out my hammerhead in this instance, but I've since gone and really made sure that all the parts are configured, so I've got a better spread of ballistic weapons on it, etc., which I didn't have at the time. Make sure that it's all claimed and ready, because sort of the time is a big factor in this. Also, sort of escorts and scouts, they maybe get a bit of a bad rep sort of with regard to mining operations. It's, that's more mouths to feed. Can't we just have another person manning a prospector or a mole laser who's just actively earning money for the group? The one thing I'd say to that is, like I said at the beginning, currently this is a test bed for org tactics and strategies. And if you're an org like ours, which has sort of a core industrial operation, but then we also have people who are more combat oriented, well, they need to practice as well. They're not going to be any good to you in a fight if eventually when you start using them, they've got no experience. So if your goal as an organization is not to negotiate, but to sort of run decent escorts and make sure you fight back if you get attacked by pirates, then make sure that you factor in getting your escort pilots, your fighter pilots, enough game time, even if it's just practicing, sort of making sure that the formations are right, knowing who goes with who, knowing who should scout on ahead. that sort of stuff is going to be invaluable when we get towards a live game. Also, when it comes to fighting back, don't forget that further down the line we're going to have things like physicalized inventory and cargo. So the objective of pirates might switch from a current focus on ransoming to one on boarding and taking your ship intact and stealing the cargo. So when it comes down to this, just keep in mind that's a pretty big advantage for you, the defender. You know, a successful boarding action is quite hard to pull off. Ships are full of narrow corridors, choke points, all this sort of stuff. But if you're not prepared for it, it's not going to count for anything. You know, so when it comes to that, like, think about it and make sure that you've got your FPS weapons. Make sure you've got things like your magazines attached. You know, there's nothing quite like getting into a gunfight and then realizing that you forgot to equip your spare mags to your armor, and then you're rummaging around in your F1 menu to try and find some spare clips and ammunition. And I guess the tied into that, the final lesson that I really personally myself learned from the siege of Ark L1 is that I am an awful combat pilot. I'm pretty sure I managed to get through that entire session without landing a scalp personally myself. So I'm going to be doing some reps in dogfighting and some PvP practice, and that's it. You know, if you wanna fight back, you got to make sure that you've got the skills, and you've got to have a fair assessment of your skills. You know, lying to yourself and telling yourself that you're an ace when you're not is just going to get you dead and out of pocket. So thanks for watching all the way to the end, and a big thank you to all the people in my org who got involved. It was really great having sort of the Discord all of a sudden flooding with additional people who hadn't even been on the mining op. Try jump into the server just to give us some extra pilots, extra guns, and everybody did a really good job, considering this was something we did not have a plan for, and as such we were very much try to come up with it on the fly. And also a big thank you to the folks from Mongrel Squad who came along, who taught us a few lessons, and I do think sort of some people have a problem with the idea of piracy, and I really don't. I've played games in the past which are pure PvE, and the problem is it gets a bit boring, gets a bit dull. That's why I like to play open world PvP games, even though I'm not a particularly focused PvP player. I love the idea of Star Citizen, but I love the idea of, you know, being out there in space, doing our industrial operations, but having to watch our backs, having to watch the skies for those dark silhouettes coming down, not knowing who they are, sort of having stuff kick off all of a sudden unexpectedly. That's what makes for a fantastic experience in a game, to me. And it's these sorts of possibilities which make Star Citizen one of the most exciting games. So I am very glad that we had that particular Tuesday night, and all those shenanigans. So if you do like this sort of content, please feel free to hit subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And if you want to drop a comment down below to let me know any tips that I've missed or things that we should have done, I think we can steer clear of you should learn to shoot loud. I know that. So thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you out there.